So within in the Corinthian church, in First Corinthians, Paul is writing a letter to a group of people who are arguing. It's a church that he planted after a very difficult time in Athens. He's on the mission field. He's running around. He's getting tired. He's getting attacked. It's kind of miserable. He kind of slithers into Corinth, and he meets a couple people that are very kind to him, and he gets a little bit of a second wind, and he starts to kind of preach the base gospel. All he's got left in the tank just to talk about Jesus. That's all he's doing. Nothing fancy. A church is growing there. They come and they see Paul. They recognize his apostleship. They listen to him. They talk about Jesus. They start to grow. He pastors them for a while. I think about a year and a half. I can't remember quite, and then he has to go. He's a missionary. He's not he doesn't stay put. He raises up elders and then he takes off. So he takes off. He goes to Ephesus and he wanders around, and he's there for a while when he gets a letter from Corinth, and he gets a letter, and he gets like 3 or 4 people that actually show up and start talking to him about some of the things that have been going on there. One of the biggest things is that they're divided. They're a house divided. They're a church divided. They're not dividing over the gospel necessarily. It's not like if you go online, you go onto Twitter, you go onto all these places, you'll see these Christians all arguing about theology and fighting about theology. These guys were fighting because they preferred certain celebrities. Okay, so they were like, and this is part of their culture. So they would, if you were back in Greek culture, you'd have your favorite philosopher. Like, I'm this philosopher's student, and they're greater than your philosopher, who is obviously a dummy. And then people would argue that this person's philosophy or this person's education, this person's knowledge is more than others, and they would argue about who's the better celebrity teacher. I know, good thing we've gotten over celebrity culture. That was a problem back then. And now, it comes into the church where you've got people that are like, man, I follow Peter, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos. Apollos is so cool, so smart, such a good speaker. Well, I follow Paul. He's so powerful and he's so strong. He's so cool. I follow Peter. He's so bold and he's so out there. Like, people were literally in the church arguing about which apostle or which missionary teacher they like best. And so Paul writes in there and he starts talking to them about the importance of unity. And he hears from the group that has brought this letter, brought this issue, that they're not just divided about their favorite teacher, they're divided about all kinds of stuff. And one of the big things was the fact that they knew they were supposed to eat together, they knew they were supposed to meet in each other's homes, but some people were going to the temple market, and they were buying meat from the pagan temple, and they were taking it home, and they were eating it just like you would go to the grocery store, buy meat and bring it back, and they would eat it. And they didn't have any problem with that. They're like, well, I'm saved. I'm a Christian. Demons and idols or whatever have no power over me. It's just meat. I'm going to eat it. Other people in the church, they couldn't, if they came from a very pagan, very difficult, very completely absorbing, addictive, like there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the temple, and so they didn't want to go anywhere near the temple. And so when they saw this meat, they weren't sure what to do with it. They're like, well, it might have been sacrificed to an idol, it might have been offered to an idol, I have to go through the temple courts, like to be able to like even buy it, and around there is all the kind of the mess that I was trying to escape. I can't have this stuff. I'm not going anywhere near it. Right? And so people start to argue about, well, what are you allowed to do? What are you allowed to do as a Christian? Some people are like, well, you have to keep the whole Jewish calendar. We're, the Jewish Messiah, and now we got to keep the whole Jewish calendar. We got to get circumcised. We got to do all the Jewish stuff. And other people are like, none of that matters. We're a whole different thing. Days don't matter. And some people are like, well, we should keep the holidays of our culture. These things are important to our culture. We should still doing that. It's in similar ways that we do right now for, do you keep Lent? Do you keep Easter? When is Easter? When is Lent? Do you do Halloween? Do you do Christmas? All these conversations we have now, still happening, right? So Paul, in this section we're about to read, he gets to sort of a summary. So he's talking about the food issue right now, but he's going to expand it to more things. Okay, so I want to read the whole section here, because what it says is, and I'll just read it. It says, all things are lawful, and you'll notice that's in quotes. Okay, so one of the things that you're seeing there is one of the interpretations of the person who's written this version of the Bible, which is the English Standard Version. They see this as a quote from the letter that he has received in Ephesus from that church. You know, this is the problem. And some people are saying that everything is lawful, right? We're allowed to do whatever you want. We're saved. So therefore the world is our oyster. We can do, or our oyster, we can do whatever we want. And God doesn't care. Jesus doesn't care. He saved us from all our sins. Therefore we can do whatever we want. Everything is lawful. He fulfilled the law. Why was there a problem? And he says, quote, all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. And then quote, all things are lawful, but not all things build up, right? He's like, yes, you're not saved by works, you're saved by grace. You don't go to heaven because of anything you do. You go because of your faith in Jesus and whether or not you believe he did everything necessary for salvation. And so therefore, yeah, you're right. You can do all kinds of things in this world. The Jewish law doesn't apply to you. The laws of man, the way that they are put, many of them are not applicable to you because they're either immoral or because they're anti-God or anti-Christian. Therefore, no, they don't apply. But not all these things are helpful. Like, you guys are going out there and doing these things that are actually going to be harming you. Yes, they're not illegal. Yes, they're not anti-biblical, but they're not helpful. And they're not building up, and they're not bringing unity, and they're not helping people to grow. They're not encouraging one another. In fact, you doing these things is being unhelpful and destructive. Verse 24, let no one seek his own good but the good of his neighbor. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question around the ground of conscience, right? So these are two different thoughts, right? One is let no one seek his own good. Like, instead of thinking, man, I like meat, screw you, I'm gonna go have whatever I want, or I like beer, screw you, or I like whatever, forget you guys, I'm gonna go do whatever I want because Jesus says I'm allowed to. Paul's like, no, listen, don't worry so much about yourself and what you like. Worry about the good of your neighbor. What's the best thing you can do to serve, love, care for, show that you love that neighbor? Go ahead and eat whatever is sold in the meat market. Fine. You're right. That's not a problem. But don't do it if all of a sudden there's a problem with your conscience. For verse 26, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. That's another quote, as in, like, we're allowed to eat everything on earth, right? Verse 27, if one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you're disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then don't eat it for the sake of the one who informed you and for the sake of conscience. Let me stop there for just a second. So he's talking about going to people's house for this really controversial thing, that the meat offered to idols. And he says, if you go to an unbeliever's house and they don't care and they're just having meat, eat the meat. Don't make a stink over it. Don't stand there and be some religious jerk who's going to stand there and just judge everybody. They're unbelievers. They don't care. They don't know. Go in there and build a relationship with those people. Don't make a big deal about it. But if you go to someone's house and they're like, I don't know if I should be eating this, and I'm not sure about this. This one went to the temple. It was offered in sacrifice. I feel really weird about this. What do you think? For the sake of the conscience, for the sake of the one who said, I'm not sure about this, I feel like I'm going against God in this, don't eat it. Because the meat is not as important as the people. I've told my kids this, I've told so many people this about so many things. Consider what you have in your life that is super important to you. Your car, your DVD collection, your whatever gaming device, your hockey cards, your pick something that you think in your life is absolutely like your favorite thing. If someone comes into your house and they grab that thing, that physical object, whether it be your controller or whether it be your DVDs or whether it be your whatever, pick something that you like, and they take it, they look at it, and they break it. Accidentally. Say it's accidentally. Is that person more important than the thing to you? That's where the test is. That's exactly what's happening in this verse. The question is, when this thing happens and this object becomes a problem, who do you prefer? Do you prefer the object or do you prefer the person? The message that you're seeing right here is, you need to realize that the person is more important than the meat. The person, their relationship with God, their conscience, their relationship with you is more important than what you eat, than more important than that thing. Your priority needs to be them, not you. Them, not the object. Them, not the thing. There's a lot of things in your life right now, and I'm guessing that you have this thing that you're like, sure, I'll share. Yeah, I don't care. Whatever, have whatever you want. But this far and no further is something in your life that if someone were to break it, someone were to take it, someone were to damage it, someone were to scratch it, suddenly that object will become more important than the person who did it. That's the warning here, and especially to Christians, to say, you got to prioritize the people. Let me keep going. We're not quite at our verse yet. Now he says, I don't mean your conscience, but his. So in other words, you are now captive to the other person because their conscience is the one that's tweaked. Their conscience is the one that feels like it's weird. So you're saying, I'm going to come to your level. I'm going to serve you at your level. Even though I don't think it's a problem, I care about you more than I care about the meat. I care about you more than I care about the thing. Whatever it is, I care about you more. That's what you're saying. For why should my liberty be determined by someone else's conscience, right? That's the argument. Why am I not allowed to do this, right? Why am I not allowed to do this? The answer is because of love. If I partake with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of that which I give, for which I give thanks? The whole argument here is yeah, you're allowed to do these things. You can do what you want, eat the meat of wherever you want, have these things, enjoy the stuff. The world is your oyster. God, you have been saved from everything. There's no work you can do that will make you lose your salvation. There's no work you can do to make you gain your salvation. It is through Christ. He's done. He's finished the law, and your relationship with him. He's your conscience on the inside, your relationship with him in your heart. That's what matters. Your connection to the church and people. That's what matters. But you need to subordinate to serve all people. That's what Jesus said. If you want to be greatest in my kingdom, serve everyone. And one of the ways you serve is to subordinate your conscience, subordinate your preferences, subordinate your desires, subordinate your stuff to other people. It sucks. It's hard. It's difficult. Sometimes you feel like you can't do anything. All these things that you want to do, you can't do, because of the weakness of the people around you, but that's how you're showing them love. Now we're getting into our verse, which says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or Greeks, to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. So he says this. You know, when Jesus came to earth, he wasn't afraid of the Pharisees. He would, grind up some wheat and eat it on the Sabbath. He'd heal people on the Sabbath. He wasn't bound by these insane human laws from these people that were freaking out, right? He had liberty because he interpreted the scriptures properly. He wasn't terrified of the judgment of others. He lived as he was supposed to because he understood the law. He wrote it in the first place, and he wasn't willing to sacrifice his liberties for the sake of the folly of others. And so he would heal on the Sabbath, and he'd walk on the Sabbath, and he'd eat on the Sabbath, and he'd even, touch lepers. He did all kinds of stuff that was against the human laws because he had liberty. But what else did he do? Well, he subordinated himself. He served. He came as a servant to all. He would actually, as God of the universe, he came and he housed himself in human flesh. He came and was born as a baby. He lived as a servant to his family for 3 decades. He went out and he started to serve other people. He would go to the lame, and he would go to the demon-possessed, and he'd go to the leper, he would go to the poor, he'd go to the outcast, he'd go talk to people that nobody else would. He would serve children that nobody else valued. He would continue to use his life and subordinate himself and bring himself down, humiliate himself, humble himself, condescend is the word, himself, so that more people could meet him and be saved. That's what he did. And he says, and Paul says, in the same way, what I do is I prioritize people and I prioritize the gospel. And therefore, if something's getting in the way of me showing love to someone, and if something's getting in the way of me being able to earn the trust of this person, earn the relationship with this person to the point where I can share with them the love of Jesus, I'm getting rid of that thing. Why would I worry so much about what I'm having for supper? Why would I worry so much about what day is on the calendar? Why would I worry so much about where I'm standing? Why would I worry so much about that if it keeps me from loving, serving, caring for, and explaining how not to go to hell to someone? What's your priority? And so, I guess when it comes to application, I think of it this way. What in your life, what in my life, and I'll personalize it too, am I prioritizing over people? What have I done? Whether it be, I need to be right. I need to be right in this argument. I'm going to keep arguing. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep, pushing. What in your life are you doing? Do you have? Is your habit? Is your rule that is actually preventing you from serving, loving, and gaining the trust of, gaining relationship, building friends with others? This is something, like, I grew up in a very conservative church, and so what would happen is somebody would, they'd be interested in Pokemon, they'd be interested in cartoons, they'd be interested in, say, Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, and it wasn't immediately, hey, that's interesting, let's have a conversation about this, that's really, why do you like that, what's going on there, let's talk about it. It was immediately, that's of the devil. You need to stop doing that, right? Video games, what a waste of time. Or all that, and there wasn't a relationship. There was this hard and fast rule that stopped the relationship dead, which meant that person, the conversation was over. So in your life, and you might think, man, I don't do that. I don't have that. I don't have any of these things that nobody, that I push people away. Well, just hold on for a second and ask yourself the question: what in your life if somebody broke it? What in your life if somebody took it? What in your life if somebody disagreed with? What in your life do you do that has actually separated you from others? Not because you're seeking to be more holy or seeking to be more obedient to Christ and it's immoral, but because it's a lifestyle choice you've made, or something that you've got from your tradition, or something you've gotten from your own growing up culture that is actually keeping you from serving more people. I don't know what that is for you. I know for me, there has been times where because I'm not a fun person, right? Dancing and going out to anywhere. I don't go to parties, all the rest of that stuff. I'm afraid. I'm a very socially introverted person. And so even if I was invited out, if I was invited to do a lot of things, I'd be like, I'm so uncomfortable in going to those places. I don't know if I can, right? I'm going to sit there and be worried. So the question is, for me, was that wrong? Should I have gone to those places? Should I have pushed through just so I could say to that person, I value what you want. I value being where you want to be. I want to make sure that I show you love. No, I don't have to go there and sin. No, I don't have to go there and be insane. But should I have gone? Maybe I should have, right? So I think for you, ask that question to yourself, meditate on it a little bit, and just say, okay, is there a way that I'm offending someone or that I'm pushing people away because of what I want and not because of what God wants? Are there people I could be sharing love with, but I'm not because I'm judging them or I'm pulling away from them because of my preferences? Is there stuff in your life that you have that if it was broken or if it was hurt or that it was taken away, you would break that relationship with people, whoever touched it, and you'd never speak to them again? What is that thing for you? Isn't he cute? He's adorable.
This is just wrong. This is just wrong with so many levels.
The eyes say cute, and then you get close and start screaming. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's a shiter. Look at the shiter. I guess that's better than a spark.